Everyone, so this is the call, and what I'd like to know is, are you a lunatic? And what I mean by that is actually, it has to do with this idea of lunacy, and lunacy being, in essence, manipulated by one's emotions, right? So in other words, the moon goes full, and people start to lose their minds. And why would that be? There's an old image that I saw a while back. It was in a Taoist book, I believe, in which it showed the moon as it went to full. First off, what it showed was a spinal cord, right? So it showed the human spinal cord, and it showed as the moon was going to full, there was a movement up the spinal cord towards the head. And as the moon goes to new, there was a movement down the spinal cord towards the root. So the idea of lunacy or lunatic, these words actually make a great deal of sense. And so this technique that I'm going to teach you in this video is a technique that I've utilized probably more than any practice outside of Mula Bandha or root lock over the last 25 years. You can look at Mula Bandha or root lock. It's contractions along the pelvic floor, basically. But regardless, this particular technique I've utilized many, many, many times because it does something that's extraordinarily powerful. And in my opinion, it is the cure for lunacy or being out of control of one's emotions. And the reason this technique works is because it helps you saturate with oxygen. When you saturate with oxygen, it takes away the neediness to inhale and exhale. In other words, if your diaphragm is doing this, your mind is doing this, right? So there's a correspondence between how the diaphragm is moving and in some ways what we'll just refer to as the lower mind. So the intellect or the lower mind are very tied to the movement of the diaphragm. And so if the diaphragm is moving really, really, really slow, though, then the mind is also moving really, really slow. So this particular practice gives one the opportunity to saturate with oxygen, to remove the anxiety to inhale and exhale, which then steadies the motion of the diaphragm, which then steadies the motion of the mind and helps a person locate their center. Right? Once you recognize your center, once you are centered, then all motion, because what is emotion? Emotion is energy in motion. So energy in motion is what generally will throw off people, right? So these emotions rise up and down. There's anger, there's this emotion and that emotion. We can't find our center. Then in essence, we become over-identified with the emotion, which is, there's a lot of problems around that. But generically, spiritually speaking, if one is identified with their emotions or their emotional states, it means they're identified with the finite, not the infinite. They're identified with that which is transient and temporary and not that which is permanent and consistent throughout the course of their life from point A to point B, from birth to death, which is presence itself. So what is this technique? Well, before I'm going to get into what the technique is and teach you how to do it, down below the video is my website, and if you follow that link, you will come to my Sovereign Tantric page, and on the Sovereign Tantric page, you will find a freebie. And also on the Sovereign Tantric page, you'll find information about my Sovereign Tantric Sexual Energy Coaching Program, as well as a couple other breathwork practices that I have offered on that page. But this specific freebie is called The Formula. The formula is again, it's pretty much in summary everything I've learned over the last 20 to 25 years studying sacred sexual practices. And this is the most practical stuff, right? There's not a lot of esoteric language in this descriptions. It's 16 points, I believe, and all these 16 points are very straightforward. If you do these things, if you consider these things, you will have more powerful experiences, sexually speaking. So now let's go ahead and we'll get into the technique. So the technique is, and those of you who watch my videos will not be surprised, breath of fire. Breath of fire is absolutely extraordinary because, as I mentioned before, oxygen saturation, and secondarily, another thing that breath of fire does is because the motion is at the navel, so down here, right? So right at the belt line, when you're pulling in your belt line, air will go out. When you relax your belt line, air will come in. Now, why is that interesting? Well, that's interesting because one, that connects you to your emotional center, which is in essence the second chakra. The second chakra is also where life force energy is stored. So if we can manage to center ourselves in that part of the body, we can start to differentiate how the energy coming out of that center, out of that second chakra, then in essence gets attached to our mental patterns, right? So energy rises, it picks up our mental patterns, that which we're meant to witness, not be identified with, but to witness in meditation. And so these emotions will rise to the surface, and then we can witness them if we are centered. And because the lower dantian, the hara, there's various names for this area down, again, about 2 fingers below the navel and inside the belly. So that area, again, the energy storage area is also our center of gravity. This is the conditioned center of gravity. But when we're conditioning our center of gravity up here, what ends up happening is we become over-identified with this and that and the motion of the polarities. So it requires that we learn to center within the body. As we center within the body, it also leads to great potential. There's something that I refer to as the rebound effect. I learned this when I was going through biochemistry, but I realized that the concept, not biochemistry, excuse me, biomechanics. When I was studying biomechanics, we learned this idea that if you push off against something solid, in the case of, let's say, jumping, then you will elevate, right? But you have to have something solid to push off against. So in this case, the feet on the floor pushes off and you jump, right? So it's very, very similar with a lot of the energetic dynamics. If you're anchored and secure in the body, right, you are connected to your body, you're anchored and secure in your body, you have a safe home base to come back to. Because some of the spiritual stuff can be kind of freaky. Those of you who've messed around with psychedelics and things like that, you know this. If you've ever had any freakouts, you know this. So there can be some weird, scary things that come up. Even if you're not on psychedelics, I've had several experiences which bordered on terrifying, and it was a lot of ego death stuff. And these things were not influenced by marijuana or any other psychedelics. It just happened. Very freaky things. So I'm not going to get into that, but just so you know, the reason I was able to come back to center without feeling like I was going to lose my mind during these situations was because I've done a lot of physical practices. In other words, I could locate my center. All right? So, breath of fire. We'll get into the technique now. So the technique of breath of fire, in this video, we're going to do it for 3 minutes. I'm going to play some cheesy meditation kind of music, and I encourage you to keep up. Will you get dizzy? Maybe, probably. Might you find it difficult to do, or perhaps you'll find this technique a little bit like clunky? Yes, possibly. However, what you will find then is if you can stick out the whole 3 minutes of this technique along with the breath retentions we're going to do at the end, you're going to feel significantly different after we do this technique than you felt prior. So just keeping that in mind. So the breath of fire is done, again, with the navel point, with the hara, the lower dantian. So when you pull in your belt line, so I guess I have to demonstrate a little bit here. So when I pull in my belt line, air goes out. When I relax my belt line, air comes in. So it's not that you all out there wanted to see my belly, so I apologize for that. But nonetheless, I think you got the idea. Belt line goes in, air goes out. When you relax the belt line, air comes in. So it's like giving yourself what's called the Heimlich maneuver. All right, which is like when someone's choking on something, you press in and it drives air out through the the esophagus and whatnot, and it blows out whatever is stuck in the person's throat. So that is the Heimlich maneuver. This is kind of like the Heimlich maneuver in that regard. So at first, if you have a hard time doing this technique at the rate that we're going to be doing it, then you can slow it down. So instead of you can just do, right? So a little bit, little bit, little bit, little bit. Just keep in mind, belt line goes in, air goes out. You relax the belt line and air will naturally come in. You do not have to try to inhale and exhale. The navel point is doing all the work. And this will draw your awareness into your body's true center of gravity. So let's go ahead and we'll get into the technique here. All right, so first thing we want to do is you want to stack the spine. You need a nice tall spine to do breath of fire properly. So I'm seated on my heels. You can sit cross-legged, you can sit in a chair, whatever you need to get that upright spine. So take a deep breath in. Press your perineum down towards whatever's solid beneath you. Once you feel like the perineum is anchored, next you want to inhale a little more. Tuck the chin, align the crown with whatever light you perceive above your head. Okay. So I can kind of close my eyes and perceive a light above my head, so I align the crown of the head to that light. All right, so nice tall spine. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get into the breath of fire now. So I want you to take a full breath in. Relax your pelvic floor. Allow everything to come in. Relax whatever muscles feel tight. Exhale all the air out. Inhale half a breath. And we're going to go ahead and begin breath of fire. Keep it up. We're going to do 3 minutes. Belt line goes in, air goes out. About a minute left. Keep it up. Take a full breath in. Retain the breath. Notice the stillness. Go ahead and exhale the air out. Leave the breath out. Full breath in. Retain the breath. We're going to do another 20 seconds retaining the breath. Exhale the air out. Now we'd like you to contract root lock. So contract the anus, the perineum, the genitals, and pull in your belt line. Maintain that root lock until you naturally need to inhale. And after you naturally inhale, just let go, go into meditation, and be present. Thank you all for watching.